Hit it.
Let's get into it. 1, 2, 3.
What?
Oh,
way to go.
Yeah, it came back.
We had lots of muting going on.
Yeah, I thought for a second there, all of a sudden I lost everyone too. But welcome to My Whiskey Den, your favorite public access whiskey review show. We're happy to have you in here again today, especially today because we have Joshua and Jason. And remember, it is Joshua. If you're talking in the chat, don't say Josh. You get us all in trouble.
So good to me.
From Single Cask Nation, where these guys go to fantastic distilleries and get a chance to find the single barrel casks and just anything around that they find interesting. It's a dream job that I know every one of us would love to have, and anyone in the chat would be lying if they said they didn't. You're already a liar. Ice House or John or anyone else, we all know that's what we would like to do if we could do that for a living. So thank you guys for being on. We really appreciate it. Before we get going, we just want to say hi to everyone in the chat. Thank you for stopping in. What's everyone in the chat having? And then let's go around up here and see what everyone is having with us this evening and on the live stream.
I'm starting off with Single Cask Nation's Milk and Honey Distillery 2-year Israeli single malt whiskey finished in Jamaican rum, and it is fantastic.
Awesome. Good selection.
Yeah, I'm actually on the same thing.
Keep
Great
it
minds, Mike. Great minds.
That's right.
Whose turn is it now?
Either one of you guys, that's fine.
Oh.
I'll go. I'm just having the single cask Trinidadian rum that's finished in sherry hogshead, and that is an interesting combination. We just delved a little bit into some rums and started doing a couple reviews of them, which has been exciting because from when you're younger, you usually just remember Captain Morgan and what the hell that's bringing to the table. And then you go back years later and you're like, oh my God, why was I drinking that swill?
Yes, Captain Morgan has committed some crimes against humanity, and he should be called to the Hague. Yeah, we should be having serious conversations with Captain Morgan. I pulled my inspiration from Joshua. Oh gosh, this reverse camera, I'm going to be doing this all night long.
Yep.
You think I could just like be a normal functioning human being, but I'm responding to my screen being backwards. So there, Isla region. This is our 9-year-old blended malt, which will be going live this Thursday.
Mm-hmm. And yes, you did take inspiration from me. I'm doing the exact same.
So they're teasing us with the future.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Yes.
I like that. Teasing us with the future.
They're very good at that.
Yeah,
that's an album name.
Mike, I'll let you go because I know you have been a member of Single Cask Nation a long time before I was, and it makes me feel kind of dirty saying that, but it's the truth.
It's okay to be dirty.
It is.
Yeah.
So can you guys tell just quickly how you, or not quickly, it doesn't matter. We'll go as long as you want. But what started you off in Single Cask Nation? What got you two together, and how'd you get to where you're at now?
Yeah, it's a story as old as time. Boy meets whiskey, whiskey meets boy, boy meets boy, and then that was it. We were happily ever after. So we were both whiskey bloggers. I was behind Good Scotch Drink. Joshua was behind Dew Malt. I started as whiskey host. He started as Jewish Single Malt Whiskey Society. We evolved. And then it was Joshua who reached out to me Thanksgiving of 2010 and said, I've got this crazy idea. Tell me how crazy I am. And I had a hunch that I knew what he was going to say. And he said, I'm thinking about bottling under the name of the blog. And I said, that's a really smart idea. My exact words were, that's $1 million idea. And I've spent 10 years proving myself wrong on that one. I said, that's a great idea. Go ahead and do it. And he said, well, I'd like you to be a 50-50 partner. And I said, well, that's magnificent. And so I walked into the house. I was at my sister-in-law's in Palo Alto in California. And I said to my wife, I think I just had a life-changing conversation with Joshua. And she said, well, whatever you want to do, I'll support it. And again, I said $1 million idea and live to regret it. She said, you do it and I'll support you and live to regret it. And so, many times, often a day, she will tell me just how much she has sacrificed for my dream. And that's the type of woman I love. That's how I like to be treated. So, and then that's it. We got to work. We LLC'd. We came up with LLC, which is the overarching owner of all of our brands. And so Single Cask Nation is one brand now owned by J&J Spirits, which was formerly Jewish Whiskey Company. And then just very quickly, and then I promise I'll let Joshua talk, oh gosh, my wife is watching this live, or she can hear me downstairs. I'm being watched. She just texted me to say, hey, oh gosh, this is a different world. Did I mention how much I love my wife? Because it's a lot. It would be
20
hard
times.
to measure. It'd be hard to measure. And so we created, I'm sorry, she's still texting me. I'm closing my eyes so I can't see it. We created Single Cask Nation, which is the independent bottling company. We have Whiskey Geek Tours, where in non-end of times, we lead whiskey tours around Scotland, which are a ton of fun, do a lot of drinking in warehouses. We had the Whiskey Jubilee for a number of years, which was the festival in New York, Chicago, and Seattle, which is currently mothballed. And then we also have the podcast, One Nation Under Whiskey, and one podcast has begat another podcast where we now also do extra. It's all about whiskey. Did I miss anything, Joshua?
Well, I think, you didn't miss anything, except what I find so interesting about this story. God, your wife, I'll let her know how much you love her.
She's incredible.
She knows. She's a good woman. My wife, on the other hand, is not paying any attention. What's interesting is we're 10 years into this, and you're rattling off all these things we've done. We only knew each other 6 months before I called you up on like a national holiday, interrupting your Thanksgiving lunch or dinner or whatever to offer you this idea. And it's just very funny every time I think about that. Like, we barely knew each other.
Yeah. Which is funny. It's the thing we talk about, where at the time Joshua's got the idea, I felt like I knew what he was going to say. And then he included me 50-50. And it just felt like, yeah, this is brilliant. It was only getting a year or two into the company that we actually took a look back and said, we only knew each other 6 months, had met in the flesh one time. And there was just this level of trust, this level of mutual respect. It's been one of the things we've said about the company is, we think we're good guys, but in launching a business, we've operated that business as good guys. And we have no written contracts, no signed contracts for anything that we have in place. And yet we have, relationships with Wild Turkey, relationships with Aaron. We had a relationship with Kilholman. We've got multiple bottling halls. We've now got multiple shippers. It's all on the up and up, and it's all just based on being good guys and working with good people. And so knowing each other 6 months was really the groundwork for being good guys and just, doing this the right way.
And we found that in a lot of the whiskey community where, like, we're not anywhere close to each other, the three of us, but, through, different sources and stuff, we've found a way to enjoy spending time together and talking about what we enjoy. And I've only met Mike once, and poor Ben is staying out in South Carolina. We're not going to go see him. Apparently, he's just way out there.
He's never going to get to leave either.
Stranded.
But yeah, you just meet people that it kind of clicks with, and you kind of it doesn't always happen in where you're at. I mean, in bigger cities, of course, you're going to run into 40 people that you like and get along with, like whiskey wise. But in a smaller city, you don't have 12 million people to pull from, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I like people, but I'm not having that kick-ass time or that really great night when you're hanging out with people. It's like, it's all right. I enjoy your company, but it's not like, I'm super excited every time this week comes up, and you meet those people, you're like, I like you guys. We're in.
Right. Well, and that was the thing for us, right? I was Eastern Washington State on the Palouse, and Joshua was up in Connecticut. And so we really had a full country between us. And yet with Twitter, which was kind of a decent place to be at that time, and then Facebook, which was a decent place to be at that time, and then kind of even limited email contact, FaceTime contact, it just worked with a nation between us. And then I moved a little bit closer to him, and it all went to shit. We're announcing the end of the company on tonight's chat. So
It was good while it
right?
lasted.
As long as you guys have the releases you're talking about coming out in a couple weeks, I'll be, especially the one you just held up. You hold it together through there, and I'll be okay. Maybe.
Yeah. Thursday's canceled. Forget about it.
So you guys have both the online releases and you have the retail releases. So can you tell what makes you put one in one versus the other, and what is the big differences between those two?
Yeah, had you asked me that question, well, I think the answer to that question changes a little bit.
All right.
Let's get a little historical here. When we first started the company, it was online only. There was nothing for retail, so anything that we put online was anything we bottled, period. And as we were selecting casks, we would always look backward to what we wanted to release in the future, right? We always wanted to keep it interesting, change distilleries or change cask types, things like that. And in 2017, we launched the retail range. And part of that was, obviously, we're a small company, but we want to grow. We haven't gotten to that $1 million promise, that we had there. So we wanted to grow. We launched the retail line. And what we decided to do is treat our online portion of the business as our special projects division. Right? You can go into any liquor store, and if you're an informed consumer, you know what you're looking at. And if you're not so informed, you need a little help, a retailer can help you. But retailers can't hold all the information for everything that they have in their shop. And sometimes stories are too big to be told from a retail shelf or from a retailer helping you out. So we said, okay, online will be where we have our distillery direct relationships where, for instance, we do Wild Turkey. And Wild Turkey says, we're happy to do this, but we don't want to find your Wild Turkeys on retail shelves competing with our Wild Turkeys. Okay, understood. That's online only. So that's a special project. Another example of a special project is something Jason and I are working on right now. We bought 2 casks of Catoctin Creek. Oh, geez, Patty B. the Rambler. You're going to hate this because I'm about to talk rye whiskey, Patty B. the Rambler.
We'll bring them back. We'll bring them back. Take them to the edge and we'll bring them back.
That sweet black licorice.
So we're working with Catoctin Creek, and they had 2 casks worth of 100% rye that had no heads, hearts, and tails cuts. It was just everything. And they matured that, and we tasted both casks at 4 years, right, Jason? years of age?
2 or 3. It's funny. If you give me a second, I'll just check my paperwork here. We take.
Uh-oh. His volume went away. He's muted.
Oh, he muted himself, I think. Hold on. Let's see. Oh, I can't. Yeah, he muted himself.
Yes.
There. I think you got it now.
Yeah.
I tried to cheat. I tried to get you back, but it didn't work.
Yeah, my road will kick in and out. Like something else will compete for my road, and I'll lose this, but I'll always come back. Don't you worry, Paddy B, the Rambler. And so we tasted it around 2 years old, Joshua. To answer your question.
Right. So we tasted it around 2 years old. So maybe it's 3-ish now. But the idea behind this was, so first off, this is a product that Catoctin Creek had never done before. They worked with Larry. What's Larry's last name?
Oh, gosh. I didn't
Doesn't
practice
matter.
this before we came in.
One of the head distillers at MGP who created the 95.5 mash bill for MGP for their rye. So he helped them figure out this distillate.
Nice.
They put it into cask for about 2 years or so. And we actually purchased a PX sherry cask from Kilhoman. They had used it to finish one of their whiskeys. We sent that PX sherry ex-Kilhoman cask to Catoctin Creek and filled that cask with the rye. So it's going to be 100% rye with PX sherry treated with Kilhoman heavily peated Iowa Scotch whiskey.
You might have just pulled me back from the edge right there. That might have been the part that just pulled me right back. I was out on the ledge and I started walking back just right there. That was
Professional move. Move. Larry Ebersold is the Larry who
Ebersold.
created the
That's
95.5.
That's it.
Before somebody puts it in the comments and really embarrasses us.
So that's an example of, that's obviously a special project. Like you can't just talk about that from, a single bottle on a retail shelf. And even if a retailer has the patience to listen and learn that story, the customer may not have the patience to listen to that story. So with that said, I apologize to all of your viewers who had to suffer through that story. But yeah, so online
used to it
become,
just like I have.
Yeah.
yeah. There we go. So online
Glasses slipping down again.
has become our special projects division, and so we kind of treated it as that, right? That'll be the interesting, weirder stuff. Doesn't mean it's better. It's just a bit of a different story, but still we have to look backward as to what we're going to do next to make sure that whether it's online or retail, they're always keeping it fresh, always keeping it new, because the nail in the coffin for an independent bottler is just doing the same shit over and over again. It has to be different all the time.
And
So-
you guys. Oh, sorry, Mike.
No,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, what's the most difficult single barrel that you've had to procure?
Difficult. What do you mean by difficult? Because
Either difficult
this
as
could go a
in
number of directions.
Well, let's go on. We can go in all the directions, but like, what's been the ones? Just obviously it's been rewarding once you release it, but or you can give an example of something that's been difficult to get a hold of.
I think I'll know the one you might go with, Jason.
Yeah. The Glenfarclas proved to be a process. And the Amrut comes to mind as well.
Oh, that's a good.
Between selecting it and it actually coming to the US, it gained a year of age, and we needed to send them new labels for it. And I've always had an expression ever since I moved to the United States, and certainly with the business with Joshua, I've got an expression: moving at the speed of Scotland. Which is if you bring American expectations of how quickly things should move, you're going to be bitterly disappointed in Scotland. It's going to go a whole hell of a lot slower than that. However, we have a new expression, moving at the speed of India. And that is a degree over from moving at the speed of Scotland, where even the Scotsman was going, this is taking a bit fucking long. Like, let's hurry this up. Whereas the American is just bouncing off the walls by this point.
Yeah.
And so that was tricky. So yeah, the Glenfarclas, and it's never ever to do with the distillery.
No.
You know, it's always to do with importation. It's always to do with some other line, another cog in the machine. And so it's frustrating, but there are those moments when you just kind of sit back, focus on your other projects, and wait for something to come to fruition. For example, we're now working on our second Glenfarclas, and we're now a year and a half into that, and we're no further forward. We selected the casks a year and a half ago at the distillery in the warehouse, and they're still sitting in cask, sitting in the warehouse, and it'll happen. It'll happen.
Now, did you start making labels for it now, or do you just have like the outline where you change the 13 to a 14 or something? Just like, we're just going to fill that in later. We have the rest of it down.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
This is the beautiful thing about mistakes. You get to learn from them. I want to leave it at that.
Yeah, Debbie Samuels, a very good long-time Nation member, says India has a totally different take on time for all things. And you can only imagine what happens when you get whiskey from them.
Yeah.
But it was amazing. But we had an interesting situation. This is why difficult can go in a number of different ways here, Mike. We had it where we'd made the selection, and then we were giving a schedule, a time frame, some expectations. And then time ticked. And that'll normally happen from the moment we select a cask to the moment the cask comes in. I think I was even saying this in maybe the Blended Isla YouTube video that we recorded yesterday, where time passes from our selection to us having it in our warehouse to us releasing it for sale. And the thing with Amrut is, in Scotland, if you lose a year, things aren't going to change that quickly, flavor profile or evaporation. In India, a year is a long time for your flavors and for your evaporation. Yeah. And so we were a little nervous about what would it taste like once we actually had it, and what would our volume be like. And if we did the same thing now with Amrut, we'd be in big trouble, because was it a bourbon barrel for the Amrut? It was a barrel
for still bourbon, yeah.
And I remember the number 168. Was that the original number?
That was the original. That was the original number, and we lost 29 bottles.
Yeah,
in 1 year.
That's 5 cases. It's like you've just lost 5 cases into the atmosphere. And so if we release that now, we'd have a really hard time, because we already know that bourbon barrels are not going far enough. And so imagine a bourbon barrel from India that's lost a further 5 cases. And so here's the final sentence. We tasted it at the New York Jubilee, maybe 2015. Time doesn't mean anything anymore. And we tasted it together off to the side. And it was absolutely delicious. And we both heaved a massive sigh of relief that, okay, it hasn't gone to shit. It hasn't been completely overwhelmed by wood. It had just become more tropical, become more unctuous, a hint more sweeter. It was a cracking example of Amrut. So
yeah, I know. We were talking to someone from there, and they can lose, I think it was like 12 to 15%, and I was like, that's a scary chunk when you're usually thinking, 3, 5 at most, or 7 if your owner is really nice to you.
Right. Yeah. Like 2% for us in Scotland is a big angel share. It's what the tax man allows you.
And I know a couple of you guys are drinking the milk and honey stuff.
Yeah.
They're maturing their whiskey in 4 of the 5 climate zones. Israel has 5 different climate zones. Anyway, The casks that they're maturing at the Dead Sea are losing 25%. That's the angel share.
Holy crap!
It's the lowest place on Earth. I was there last June, and it was 7 billion degrees out, and the casks are sitting atop a hotel in a chicken wire cage. So it is just like it's full on there. It's not in an actual warehouse, and so 25%. And so I tasted stuff at 7 months that was like some of the best stuff you'd ever have, and it tasted 18 years old. It was just absolutely wild.
Yeah, coming soon from Single Cask Nation, a milk and honey Dead Sea cask bourbon barrel with 6 bottles released.
Yeah, exactly right.
Could be charity bottles.
Yeah.
Everyone has to bid on these. We don't just get to sell them.
Yeah. Well, that brings up a good point, because you guys did that recently with the charity auction, or the charity bottles.
Yeah.
You guys mind talking about those?
Yeah. What was it we did?
I
remember a small outturn.
The swim around Isla. Yeah.
There's the Great Isla Swim, where instead of the 144, I think we sold like about 100 of those globally.
We got about 100 and a bit over 100.
Yeah, little sketchy. And then and then the other one that we just did recently was we had 12 leftover bottles from a 12-year-old MGP bourbon that was part of a Whiskey Jubilee bottling that we did. And so with 12 leftover bottles of the original juice, we just couldn't even begin to sell them. Yeah, there you go. One of 12 bottles. And so, we're always trying to do our bit for charity. We know that we can do good things with whiskey. And we've had great success with our Giving Tuesdays after Thanksgiving. And so this was just a chance for us to put together a little offering and raise a bit of money for the bar community, who in the very early days of COVID, not much has changed, were absolutely hurting. And we got to raise some money. Again, numbers, time, I don't remember how much we raised. I know we announced it on Facebook.
The last Giving Tuesday we did, so that was in December.
This was for the lockdown.
Oh, for the lockdown? Oh, I don't remember.
Right? Numbers, time.
That's all right.
How does it all work?
That's all right. Debbie was wondering how bad would it be if the milk and honey had the same delay as an Amaret?
Right.
It's a great question. So that cask was lying in Tel Aviv, and in Tel Aviv, their angel share is pretty close to Amaret's. So you're dealing with 12-ish, give or take, percent a year. So we bottled it at 2 and got close to 200-ish bottles from it. So I would imagine we'd lose 18, 20, 25 bottles per year.
Yeah. So what's been your favorite find so far?
That's a tough one. That's because it's slightly different from asking which of your children is your favorite. It's more like which of your children would you take to a desert island, and maybe not stay there with them.
Yeah,
that would be my teenager. That's an experience, isn't it? So I'm not gonna answer this as my favorite release of Single Cask Nation. I'm gonna go with kind of what surprised me. What did I not expect for us to maybe get our hands on? And it would be easy to say Imperial 30-year-old, and I would hate to take the easy answer away from Joshua. And so I'll be honest, actually. I would say it was the Glenfarclas. And again, just taking a page from Joshua's book, just to back it up for a second. When I was at the University of Aberdeen, we would purchase octaves from the Glenfarclas distillery. So this was in the late 90s. And we would drive up the distillery, we'd put the octave in the trunk of the car, and we would drive it back to the student residence. And then we'd get a plastic hose, pop the bung, stick it in, and then fill bottles using the old siphoning gasoline method. And so,
is that the siphoning gasoline, like international?
Siphoning
sign for
gasoline
that?
got
Okay.
me through college. I will tell you what.
Just want to make sure. Okay.
Aberdeen has got a harbour that is very rewarding when you siphon gas down there. So when we then started the company, and I said, well, we got a bit of a relationship with George Grant. Don't like to talk about it. And we reached out to George and said, hey, George, formerly of University of Aberdeen, we used to buy octaves, we used to bottle them, great relationship. I'm now in the US, we're starting an independent bottling company. Can we come to distillery and talk about cask purchasing? And George wrote back and said, you're more than welcome to come by the distillery. We will not be selling you any casks. And it was like, well, when George Grant says you can come by the distillery, you come by the distillery anyway. So we pitch up at the distillery, we wander around. George gives us a private tour of the facilities. It was great. Spent time with him, had a laugh. And then we went back into the chairman's office. And actually, I just recently told this story in one of our Zoom chats. But we sit down in the chairman's office, and we were with then, our silent partner, Seth, who's no longer with the company. And so he said, Jason, when were you born? I said, oh, strange question, George. 1974. All right. Joshua, when were you born? 1973. Okay. And Seth, when were you born? 1968. All right. And then you just hear, like from around the corner, you hear 3 corks popping, and then a few glug glugs. And George Grant comes back around the corner. He says, Jason, here's the 1974 family casks. Joshua, there's the 1973 family casks. Seth, there's the 1968 family casks. And as you have to do, I said to him, actually, I was born in 1958. I just lied to you. And then George popped a can of Coke and sat down next to us and drank the Coke while we sat and drank our family casks. And at that point, you start thinking, what's going to happen here that George Grant needs to take advantage of us?
Yeah.
We're here begging him for casks. We're drinking.
It's back to the siphoning.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
how we got them in the first place. Jason, you remember that length of plastic hose? Yes, George. And so Joshua, being a smart chap, had done a mock-up of our bottle, our brand new bottle, our brand new labels. And he'd said, George, just while we're drinking these, this is the mock-up. Here's we just wanted you to see it. And he looks it over. He goes, yeah, I think we can do business. And we were kind of like, business? Like, is he going to sell us casks after saying no? And he said, one condition. I thought, oh, here we go. This is why he's getting us liquored up. And then you only imagine what George Grant could possibly ask you for that would make this, no a yes. And he says, you just have to use our proprietary font on your label. We're like, okay, what's the condition though? That's it. It just has to be our font for just our name, Glenfarclas. And we were okay. Like
we would have done that, but we thought we were going to get in trouble.
Right.
Right. I mean, it makes me think of independent bottler like Gordon MacPhail, right? Where they're using the Linkwood label, right? The Mortlach label, and these were distilleries that never had their own labels, but they got the rights to use the name. And we were I felt as if we kind of got that same deal. In Glenfarclas, they will sell. You can find plenty of Glenfarclas out there, but not with the Glenfarclas name. And, it's usually undisclosed Speyside or perhaps Speyside's best distillery, whatever they happen to call it. And the fact that not only did they say we can use their name, but use their own font and everything, like that just, in our opinion, made the bottling that much better for us at least.
And then 5 years later, we released it.
That's a true story.
Yeah, I can see how you
Moving
put
at the
that much
speed of
time
thought.
into it. That's that might be one of the most worthwhile ones, or ones that cause you a little hassle. But that's still an awesome story. I mean, even if you just would have handed me the whiskey of my birth year, I would have been like, I'm good. We can go home. We don't even I don't need to bug you anymore. We're good.
Good meeting. Thanks.
Can we do this again?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, Glenfarclas was so that stands out as one that surprised me, given that we really turned the tables around on that one. Yeah, you're not wrong, John K. Yeah, we had a jolly good time. Joshua, do you have one? I'm always curious about your answers. There's a reason we have podcasts that last 2.5 hours. I'm genuinely interested in your answers.
In my favorite or the most so we were asked the question and you said, "Fuck your question."
your
I'm gonna
favorite
tell you my
line.
own story.
Yeah.
I want
By the way,
you
is
to
it
answer
okay
the
that we
question that
swear?
I answered.
Is swearing okay on the show? I just realized.
Absolutely. We're beyond the 5-minute
Yeah,
YouTube
there's-
limit, so we can
yeah.
you can let it fly.
Once you get
interesting.
past the first 5 minutes, there's no more Tourette's alarm. You're
Yeah.
good.
Jeez, that's what I tell my wife. Okay.
5 minutes, Jason. Really? Anyway,
I was bragging. I'm on a YouTube show. I'm bragging.
when Jason and I started the company, we each had these dream distilleries that we wanted to bottle from. Springbank, high on our list. It remains high on our list. We have yet to bottle a Springbank. Highland Park was high on our list. I wouldn't say we've bottled Highland Park. We've bottled 3 Stones of Stenness whiskeys, but not Highland Park, Stones of Stenness. And then for me, and this was actually my number one, even over Springbank, even though Springbank is my favorite distillery, is Imperial. It's the only distillery I collect from. And by collect, I mean I buy 2 so I can save one and drink the other. And yeah, I just have way too much Imperial. But I never thought that we would have access to Imperial casks because A, the distillery is not just shut, but it's demolished. They're not making any of it. And I was under the impression that most of the Imperial stock that was out there was owned by Signatory or Gordon MacPhail or a few others. I didn't think any existed anywhere. And then we found a broker who just happened to buy a nice chunk of it. And I just threw my body at them. Said we need Imperial. And so to date we've bottled 2 23-year-old for retail. We're about to release a 30-year-old for online. And then we have another 23-year-old that will be for our UK, European, Asian markets. So that was probably like the thing I'm most proud of because it's like the one distillery that I just care. So I care about all of them. I care so much about this one.
But especially to pull something from the fire that you think is gone and dead and there's no chance in hell, and you're like, oh, well, hold on. Like, that'd be like me calling them to, I'm like, I need $5,000. They're like, what? They're like, I just found something. We're all going to be happy. We just need some money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the thing that always has me nervous is you see one Imperial and you think, wow, that was really lucky. We were in the right place at the right time and we've got the right relationship. Enjoy it because we're not going to see another one. And then you see a second and it's older and it's delicious. And you think, okay, well, we'll go out with a bang. Like, it's been good. Thanks for everything, Imperial. 2 casks.
Yeah, thanks for all the fish.
And then you get a third, and you start to think, is someone taking the piss here? But you get to that point where, honestly, I don't learn from my lesson. I firmly believe the third will be the last, right? I think we're asking an awful lot to then see a fourth or see a fifth. So we always thank our lucky stars when it comes together, but I don't expect it to last forever.
I was going to wait on this question, but it kind of piggybacks off of what you guys were saying with distilleries that don't exist. Now, with the COVID-19, I know that with just the American distilleries, they were figuring maybe 30 to 50% of distilleries might not make it. Are you guys thinking of, because we did a review, we had a samples, we did a review of something, and then like 2 days before it came out, Penn's like, they're closing next Friday.
Oh,
and I was like, not only was it really good, we're like, damn it. Why couldn't it have been the one that we were like, this tastes like soap and something, like tastes terrible.
Yeah.
Soap, you have my attention.
He's not lying.
But are there any distilleries that you're looking at now that you might not have before, but you guys might have like an opportunity with things starting to go south? Would you start looking into buying up barrels from different places and maybe even sitting on them for a bit?
That's a good question. That's a really good question.
I'm trying to think if there's any distillery now that we're thinking about because of COVID.
Yeah.
The interesting thing, at least from the Scottish perspective. So America's its own thing. Let's put that on hold for a moment because we primarily focus on Scotch whiskey. It's probably 80% of what we do. If we think of the U.S., there's 2,000-ish micro distilleries, craft distillers, but in Scotland, you have about 130 major distilleries and maybe 20 to 40 or so micro distilleries that are probably making more gin and vodka than they are anything else. Though there are whiskey distilleries out there. As far as the big players go, I don't necessarily see Scottish distilleries being affected because the vast majority of them, probably 60-65%, are just producing spirit to go into blends, and everything is automated. Right? You don't need people in so many of these distilleries, so there's going to be a slowdown. But things are still happening in Scotland, right? We just had a cask of Penderyn from Wales bottled. Like our bottling hall's still doing stuff. They're figuring it out. So they're big companies owned by larger corporations that have money to fall back on if sales slow down and things like that. To be quite honest, I would be more concerned about Scottish distilleries if the tariffs on Scotch whiskey go to 100%, which is
just going to add that
in August.
Spot on.
That's the biggest fear.
That's insane. I'm sorry.
Yep. No, it's
It's insane.
Wild.
Yeah.
25 was enough to be like, that could be crippling to a lot of companies. So I was like, well, if your $50 bottle goes to 75, all of a sudden you're going to start looking to someplace else for a lot of people or there's enough out there to try it. But like it's 100% is just, that's just not right. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's an industry killer. And the unfortunate thing is the first thing that it would affect is American jobs and American businesses, right? I mean, Scotch whiskey producers can find other markets. I mean, granted, they are going to be hurt. If that happens, there's no doubt about it. They're going to be hurt. But America isn't the be-all, end-all. There's other places that can be had. But for American businesses, it's scary stuff. And it's not just whiskey. It's wine. It's so many things. So that's what I fear most. And so to finally answer your question, let's say the worst happens and the 100% tariffs go into place. My hope is that distilleries like Springbank and Lagavulin and Glengarry and a few others kind of open their coffers and say, you know what, we're interested in selling to independents. And there's been a history of that. I mean, the whole, again, focusing on Scotch whiskey, the entire Scotch whiskey industry has been riddled with peaks and troughs, good times and bad times, good times and bad times. In the bad times, the independent bottlers are your distillery's best friend. We're the people that are going to buy when they can't bottle and sell their own stuff. In the good times, we're the leeches. We're the ones saying, please, can you give us a cask? So while I don't want bad times to happen, I know that eventually they will somehow, some way, some shape or form. And that's when, we'll play our small part of trying to help the distilleries and buying from them. But thankfully, there's big players like Catton Heads and Gordon MacPhail and Duncan Taylor, Signature, and so many that will also help that. And I think we're all wishing for the same distilleries. Even some Macallan would be nice, and I'm not a Macallan drinker.
Yeah, to add on to the point that you're making there as well, in the 3.5 years Josh and I have been running One Nation Under Whiskey podcast, in speaking with professionals in the Scottish industry, we would ask them as part of any interview, and this is right after Josh is saying this, the Scotch industry has been peaks and troughs. It's been a roller coaster. What do you see at the end of this boom period? How do you see this response? And to a person within the industry, they said, no, we are better equipped than we ever have been. We have gone to 7-day a week, 24-hour production. We can pull that back to 5 days a week. We can alter some things in there. We've now got global markets. We've got more markets we can lean on here. Everybody thought the industry was in a good place and that we were going to just keep on this nice plateau, maybe a slight rise, maybe a slight dip, not the bursting of a bubble. Not one industry person saw a global pandemic coming, and not one industry person saw a trading partner absolutely jettison the relationship that was very well established. And so it just goes to show, even when you think you've done best practices on an industry, something can come out of left field and then something else can come out of right field. And the thought they could both hit at the same time, is hard to really wrap your head around. And that's what we're dealing with as an industry. And it's absolutely astounding. And, I'm really sorry to hear of people losing their businesses. We're obviously worried as a very small independent bottler in the US what the future holds for us. It's not easy. It's not easy at all. And it's funny because I think it was maybe before we came on air or just as we came on air, you, Patty B, the Rambler, were talking about, who wouldn't want Jason and Joshua's jobs? Like, who wouldn't want to be flying around the world, flying around the country, tasting whiskey, selecting whiskey? Yeah, it's brilliant. I make no bones about it. But finding your place in the industry, maintaining your place, growing your place in the industry, and then having wackadoodle left field, right field things happening. Like this was jet black when actually this morning before I started a meeting with Joshua today. It's incredibly difficult, and you're always looking for what would make this easier. And then wackadoodle things happen, and you go, we can just do our best. The rest of it's just throwing shit at a wall. So.
Two-part question for you guys, coming off of what Mike was saying, and then your response here. Obviously, you guys have an international flair. You see independent bottling huge with Scotch and Irish whiskeys, but in the U.S., it's been really, I would say, almost kind of an untapped area of the industry. You just don't see it very much. Any idea why that's just not caught on here in the U.S. like it has in other places? And then two, given the COVID situation, is the atmosphere becoming ripe, so to speak, for independent bottling to potentially take off with U.S. distillers, especially those that may be struggling?
I'm going to let Joshua answer the second part.
Oh, shit, I wanted to answer the first part.
No, that's why I'm taking the first part. But I'll give you time to think about the second part, because the second part's a good part here. Fred Minnick, in his book Bourbon Curious, really does a wonderful job of
Shoot, he lost his...
Yeah, just hold on. It'll come back again for a second.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's off. Now he clicks it again. It'll come back on.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yep,
Yes.
you're back now.
Yeah.
I've got this thing where, and again, it's my road battling with my system, my SIRI will activate on my laptop depending on what I'm saying. And so if you see my hand just kind of like going off screen, I'm clearing SIRI off of, I know we all live in fear, right? And then I cleared it and it muted my microphone. God, it's a disaster. Okay. Okay. So people are
It
still
was a
here.
quick, easy fix. That was not the worst
we
thing
go.
that's happened on the
Okay.
show.
So Fred Minnick in Bourbon Curious talks about the way in which sales of casks of bourbon and rye have always happened behind the scenes in this country. And they've always gone off from warehouse A to warehouse B, and they've been reborn with new labeling that makes no overtures to the original source. Invariably, they'll have, Grandpappy's recipe on it, tell a magical marketing story, right? And that's just simply been the history of independent bottling in this country for whatever reason, right? Just the way it worked. Given our history in Scotland, we've had grocers bringing in casks, blending for consistency, releasing individual casks with distillery names on it. Josh and I, when we launched, wanted to be an American-based independent bottler in the Scottish tradition. And so we wanted to fight against what we had and what we see over here. What's been a little frustrating is, instead of there being a response to that Scottish-style independent bottling tradition in this country, instead we've seen more of the store picks. And I love store picks as much as anybody, and I love picking up store picks. But they're not branded in a way that we would want to brand as Single Cask Nation, and they're not priced in a way that we would have to price as Single Cask Nation. And so there's really no incentive for distillers to make the move that we want to see them move or to see them make. So what is left, though, are these rising craft distillers. And so we've had very good relationship with Catoctin Creek. We've had a very good relationship with Westland. We're about to do the very first independently bottled Whistle Pig. We're about to bottle Balcones. So there's this growing movement with distilleries of a certain size who see the value of that Scottish tradition of independent bottling, where Josh and I have said for years, we're a wing of your marketing department, and we're not here blowing smoke and spinning rainbows. We're telling people about your distillery, how you distill it, how you ferment it, who you hire in your community, how you bottle in the same facility. That's the story we're going to tell people. And we're running about 8,000 members in the nation. That's 8,000 pairs of eyeballs who are hearing your story. Why would you not want that? And so I'll be honest, it's a little frustrating that some of the bigger players don't want to get into bed with us in the way that Wild Turkey has. It's why we talk about Wild Turkey a whole lot, because they're amazing and the people are fantastic and the Russells are wonderful. And we've met Rarebird 101 and he's fantastic and his book's fantastic. And so, there so much has come from that I would love to see it come in more places as well. So part 2 to Joshua.
So I was so set on answering part 1 that I wasn't fully listening to question part 2.
Classic
so
Joshua.
Just reiterate
Classic Joshua. I love it when people get an insight into my life. I love it.
Well, given the situation with COVID right now and the potential for seeing a lot of distilleries close, especially the smaller craft ones, is the market kind of ripe for independent bottlers to step in and start, I don't want to say take advantage of the situation, but here in the U.S. market?
I think that there's a possibility for it. What I'm about to say, though, I want to make sure I'm wording it properly, because it could come off as not polite, and I want to be polite. I think the fact of the matter is, and I think this would go for both distilleries and breweries, is that there are so many craft distilleries, too many for the amount of shelf space that's available in most retail stores, right?
Yeah.
That
Even
there's
in the
going to
state.
be, COVID aside, and I didn't just think of this myself. Robin Robinson, who you may or may not know the name, he actually is a consultant for a lot of craft distilleries, told me early on, he said, I'm here, I want to help these guys. They want to figure out how to make their whiskey. I'll help them market them. I'll help market the whiskey, sell it, etc. He said, unfortunately, there's always going to be this percentage of micro distilleries that's got to go. And it's just going to happen. You're going to see it drop off. You're going to see copper on the market being sold, just like you would with breweries. There's so many microbreweries making great stuff, but it's too much for the market to bear. Like any bubble, right? It's going to burst. And so with that said, I think that the idea of COVID being introduced on top of distilleries doing their very best just to stick around to wait until the whiskey gets old enough to sell and so on, is going to make the problem worse. But my concern is there's not enough independent bottlers that can come in and start buying up casks to help all of the distilleries that are unfortunately going to close. I think there's no matter what you do that's going to happen. But some of the slightly larger ones, some of the ones that have already started making a name for themselves, or even have sold off part of their business, like Smooth Ambler is partly owned by Pernod Ricard and so on. There's going to be a portion of them that are going to stick around, and hopefully independent bottlers can help in some way, shape, or form. But sadly, I think we're going to see some copper on the market sooner rather than later.
Yeah,
and we had agreed that with the way a lot of it was going before this, it was almost getting like, in Wisconsin, beer is huge, so it's like hyper regional. Where say 10 years ago, you might have a really good beer and you would sell it throughout the state and everyone would be happy. Yeah. Well, now you're kind of locked down to the Milwaukee area, and it doesn't sell in Green Bay or Madison because they already have 8 breweries like we do in Green Bay. So all of a sudden now you're not going to get that pushback in that other area. So we're afraid a lot of that will kind of, we're waiting for the bubble to burst a little bit beforehand in the first place.
The distribution and shipping is a big problem for these small guys too, because they can't get it out of their states. And we had Colin Keegan from Santa Fe Spirits on again, and their Cole Keegan single malt is fantastic. It's great whiskey, but he can't ship out of a state there. But it's like there's a rule that he could, but he really can't because of all the But you guys have secured this really awesome $10 shipping, and I mean that's nobody else does that. I mean, how did you secure that? And please tell me you're going to be able to maintain that.
Or some semblance close to it, because it's still less than you pay for a bottle.
Yeah, it could be 15. It's still great, whatever. But.
Yeah. Well, we have something going for us that a distiller within a state doesn't have, which is we still operate under retail. So for us, the 3-tier system occupies the spot behind the curtain. So we have importer, we have distributor, we have retailer. What we have done from day one is occupy the role in front of the curtain, which is you, Mike Lissack, show up at a tasting with Jason Johnston-Yellin. You like what Jason Johnston-Yellin is pouring and talking about. You just simply buy that bottle from Jason. That's a mirage that only exists in front of the curtain. The behind the curtain is the full legal 3-tier system, and then we find the retail partner who's able to get that bottle to the nation member, the customer. And so I think so long as that retail and that retail partner stays in place and has access to certain states, then you can make it work. When you're a distiller and you're only allowed to sell to consumers in your bricks and mortar building, that's much, much more difficult. And I really feel for them. That's one area where we saw great success in Virginia with lockdown, is that the Virginia ABC, the Liquor Control Board, said, okay, no one's allowed to walk into your bricks and mortar store. you can ship direct to consumer. And guess what? Children weren't getting drunk in the streets, right? And packages weren't being fraudulently delivered or sold. You know, the system worked as it was meant to work with great success. And we interviewed Scott Harris from Catoctin Creek Distilling Company. And, you know, in the first month or two of the lockdown, the shipping, the direct to consumer shipping that he had now started doing for the first time ever was 80% of his business. You know, talk about something that allowed him to keep the lights on and the doors open.
Yeah.
Now imagine he was then allowed to ship across state lines as a representative of Virginia. Like, what a world Scott would then be operating in. And why that's not allowed for them, I think, is an absolute sin. But we all know, right? Local governments, state governments, federal governments, you have to show them that baby steps can work. And you get one baby step and two baby steps and then maybe half a leap. And you get them to come along with you. And that's where Scott is. When we talk to Scott now, he's very hopeful that direct-to-consumer shipping will remain in place within the state of Virginia. And then you move on to the next battle. How does he start to ship it outside? And so, shipping in the... it's a pain in the arse.
When you were saying baby steps, I kept flashing back to Bill Murray and What About Bob? You know, like, baby
Exactly.
baby steps.
Baby steps to the
Same
still.
thing.
Baby steps to the distributor. So as the membership has grown, obviously you get some picks that are highly sought after. You've had stuff recently that's sold out in a matter of a couple of minutes. But one thing which I thought was really cool, the way you guys do the lottery. You know, I've obviously entered the lottery and not getting chosen many times, and I don't feel bad about it. Versus if you go to, you know, and that's the one I did get that one, but you know, you enter a lottery at a store and then you don't get picked, and you're like, oh, you bastards. But you don't feel bad because it's just more of the way you do it. There's a certain fairness about it, but you know that, like for instance, the wild turkey, it goes well. The previous releases, they were going on secondary for quite a bit, but I like that you're like, you know, I promise I'm not going to sell this bottle on my honor, you know, and I'm a dickhead and I'm not going to, and you guys keep track of who is and who isn't, kind of.
We know
But
all
let
the
me add to
dickheads.
that, Mike, actually, our nation members keep track, right?
Yes.
Our nation members are in all the groups where these things get sold on, and they report back and say, hey, you sold this for $101 so that people could drink it, and we applaud that. You did a really fair lottery, and this jamoke is trying to get $450 for it, $650, $800. And we ban the jamoke, right? Because they checked a box. 100% of people have checked that box. So we drop the ban hammer on jamokes.
Nice.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that we're a couple of guys that are 100% against flipping. Like, mostly, I don't care what people do with their bottles. But I mean, and I had to tell this story because, you know, we put this banning in place, right? Because we would sell a wild turkey and they're 101 a pop, and people were selling them for, like Jason said, 500, 600, 800, 1,000. And then I remember my cat ate something. I don't know what happened, but $3,500 later, after being to the vet, I had to come up with cash. And so I had this old Willet bottle, and I had this Port Charlotte that I got. The Port Charlotte I sold for my costs, which I bought on auction. I bought 2 bottles. I opened one. I didn't like it. I said, sell the other one at my cost, or whatever. And the Willet, well, he was a 23-year-old Willet. I mean, it was that went for a little bit, but it was either like go into debt or save my cat. You know, it was one of those things. So we're not against that, but there's a difference between buying a bottle now, sitting on it for a little while, and say, you know what, I'm in hard times. I need to sell this, and you sell it. There's a difference between that and buying a bottle and then going to your favorite secondary page the day you receive it
Right.
and charge 8 times the amount that you purchased it for. Meanwhile, everybody who lost the lottery, and believe me, like Jason said, our nation members reach out to us. At times, I'll get 50 different messages with people saying, WTF. I would have opened mine. I would have drank mine. I entered that lottery fair and square. I lost fair and square. And this guy, and they don't use words like jamoke, they use other kinds of words. Like prick and dick and C word in there. Anyway.
We have imaginations.
So, right? And so we go into the banning immediately, and they can't purchase from our website, and they're not on our Facebook group. And I mean, at the end of the day, we want to protect those people who are there to enjoy whiskey.
Well, it's
Right?
kind of like you're protecting the group and the image,
Yeah.
all at once.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you said, you guys kind of approach it very wholesomely and honestly, and you don't want to see the image or brand kind of get tarnished in that way.
Yeah.
So I totally respect that.
Ben Holman is being a cheeky boy in the comments, which is
That's
classic
just-
Ben Holman.
That's just what I was gonna put that up. I wanted to wait
Yeah.
for a second.
Yeah, I haven't seen it now in a couple of years. It was 86, 87 bottles that were released in 2013 for $110 a bottle. And yeah, up until a couple of years ago, it was going for $4,000. Yeah, I've seen people trade it for Pappy, as in, take my Pappy, please let me have the Whiskey Jubilee bottle. And
I think I could make that trade myself.
Yeah.
That'd be okay.
but we even we tried to stop looking. We tried to stop referring to it because in the beginning when we saw it, like it was 110, and then it was 500 and 700, and then it was 1200, and then it was 2300, and then it was 3500, and then it was 4000, and it was kind of exciting for us, being the bottlers of that somebody would pay that much money for one of our bottles. They would seek it out and they would spend that much money. Some of the feedback that we got, and we listen to all feedback that we get, was that it looked like we were what am I trying to say? It looked like we were endorsing the sale and the resale and the flipping of our Jubilee bottles, while then getting upset when people would do the exact same thing to our Nation Wild Turkey bottles. And so we tried to be a little more consistent with that messaging, and we stopped watching and we stopped talking about what we were seeing them go for, even though we understand the Jubilee line has now taken on a life of its own, and there are completionists trying to get all 12. I count it every time. I've got 6 and 6.
12.
Yeah, I count it every time. If you're trying to get all 12, if you didn't get the 110 Heaven Hill 15 way back in the beginning, then yes, you're going to pay a pretty price if you can find it to complete. And that's tough because I'm a completionist and I understand where they're coming from.
So with you guys have it comes from you. You have a really good vibe. The community kind of emulates that. But it seems to be a pretty good loyalty from the people. And I'm one of them. My first one, I heard you guys on Scotch Test Dummies, and you guys, it was talking about it was the English whiskey 9 Sauternes. And I'm like, oh, it's like that sounds great. And I got it, and it was so different, which was why I liked it so much. It's like, who's doing this? And that was it. I'm like, I'm sold, and I'm all in on this. So, but
you're gonna love the Penderyn.
Oh, stop that. So,
oh boy,
I'm sure I would. But have you ever turned down a whiskey because it just didn't fit into your vibe or what you wanted to do?
Jeez.
I'm thinking we've turned down hundreds and hundreds and hundreds in the time we've had.
Really?
Do you mean a whiskey that we went, that would be all right, but it doesn't have our signature on it?
Yeah.
Is that
yeah,
what you
like
mean?
that?
Shit, man.
I'll tell you where we came close, but we didn't go all the way. If you catch my drift.
I think I know what you might talk about.
I think you do as well. One of the things, and this gets back to what Ben was saying earlier as well, or asking earlier, when we first get into bed, and I always use that language. I like that language, getting into bed with a distillery. When we first get into bed with a distillery and we want to tell that story, not the marketing bullshit, but the distillery story, we're looking for a first release that encapsulates. It doesn't replicate what they're doing, because like you rightly point out, Mike, we don't want to just replicate the distillery. We don't just want a cookie cutter rubber stamp. We want to show what it would be like in a single cask strength offering. And so we'd got the press pack for Westland. We tasted it, just went, this is fantastic. We should get into bed with these guys as soon as possible, or it's going to be a really crowded bed. And so we reached out to them. They invited us out to the Pacific Northwest.
Which could be fine.
Crowded bed. Yeah, it's not 1978 anymore. Yeah. And so we flew out and we went around the distillery. We went to their warehouse, and they said, "Yeah, here's how we would tell the story." And us saying, we're learning about the distillery, and they had we popped bungs, we moved casks around, a forklift was in play. It was very exciting, and we just couldn't quite find the cask that we wanted to be the opening chapter of the Westland story. And so we sat down at their sampling table and we were tasting through some things, and they had this kind of reddish offering that, red is always kind of interesting. And, oh, what's that? We're asking that around the table. What's this? What's that? What's this thing? And they poured us this one that we asked about, and they said, you can taste it. It's not for sale, but you can taste it. And so we tasted it, and it was peated Westland in sherry. It's not where you would start the Westland story, right? But it was a wonderful funky monkey. The big note for me, I don't want to put words in Joshua's mouth, but there was this like a carnival or a state fair kind of quality about it, where it was almost like burnt kettle corn with a diesel engine running, right? It was big and wacky and funky and interesting, and we knew like that's not going to please everybody. Like that's a particular style, and when you first introduce the nation to a distillery, you'd like to please more people than you turn off.
Yeah.
And so we finished up, we flew back to our respective homes, and we got talking, and we went through the samples that we came away with, and Joshua and I just got on FaceTime, and we said, we'll often do this. We'll say like, I have to tell you something. And invariably the other person knows what the other person's about to say. And so one of us had said to the other, like, I have to tell you something. And we kind of knew where this was going. And I remember saying, like, I can't stop thinking about that peated sample. I really want to introduce members of the nation to that peated sample. And Joshua said, I agree with you 100%, right? Absolutely. And so we reached out to Westland and we said, listen, we understand, you understand the samples we left with, the story we want to start telling. If neither one of us can stop thinking about the peated Westland, that looks like a really good sign. Do you have anything that's like that you would sell to us? And they went away and they came back and they said, listen, we'll sell you that cask that you sampled because of the way you've remembered it, because of the way you're going to tell the story. And so we bottled it, we released it, and we bring it to tastings. And I would always say to people, I don't mind if you love it, and I don't mind if you hate it, but I'm going to get upset if you say, take it or leave it, right?
Yeah.
And we did. We kind of split 50-50. There were some people who just, it just didn't work for them, and I totally get that.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But the people who did like it fell head over heels in love with it, and head over heels in love with Westland. And even those who hated it said, I'm not going to not follow Westland. I'm not going to follow your next bottling from Westland. And so Westland really got a foothold through the love it or hate it whiskey, which I don't mean to be stealing from Lafroig, but that was the reality of it. And so that was it. They were now known in the nation, and people followed them. And we've now done multiple releases from Westland, and we haven't done another peated release.
That's interesting. And we're getting into bed with them in August, so they'll be
good.
They're gonna be coming on the show then.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
We're starting off with just going over the core lineup, the peated, the sherry, and the original, and then we're gonna break off into some other stuff. But they're like, let's take this in a step process. I'm like, we can go slow. It's okay.
Take it easy.
Yeah, they're so good. Yeah, make sure you have them explain their distillation process and how it's close to Mortlach. That's a big that's a big part.
I thought that was pretty neat. But yeah, that's what we're hoping to get in with them.
They're fantastic.
Now, I think when we were talking about independent bottlers and how they haven't caught on so much in America, I just feel like there's not enough people that know that it's something exciting, like what you guys are doing. Once you find one or you try a couple and you're like, oh, I like this, and you get into the pattern, you're like, I like what everyone's tasting from here, and you're like, so anytime you get a single cask nation or like, oh god, everyone's kind of blanking on me right now.
Yeah, Cadenhead, Signature, Single Malts of Scotland.
You go back to that when you're like, oh, you pick this, sweet, I have to get this next bottle because you're getting the flavor profiles that you're looking for from it. I feel like not enough people respect independent bottlers. If you're doing more stuff from the U.S., like you said with Wild Turkey, that you're really hunting out the unique barrels. Where this is Wild Turkey, this is amped up Wild Turkey. Kind of like we were going to have Nancy Fraley on, and we were saying you have the distilleries release, then you have her come in and play with everything. Now you have the release afterwards that in general is a few notches more exciting than what it was before. Even if it was really nice beforehand, it's holy shit now. It's gone up a few levels, and I think that's what I think. Like with you guys, when people are starting to recognize like what you're putting out, you're like, this is all really interesting stuff. It's not just blend. Well, I mean, like, look at the things here. A 10-year, a single cask 10-year blend, something from Israel that's finished in Jamaican rum barrels, and a Trinidad rum that's finished in a sherry hogshead. These are all completely things you would just not find in general. Like, you go to the store, you're not going to find this at any way, shape, or form. And I think once you start seeing that, you're like, well, they're playing with neat shit. And that's just what I think it is. I'm like, you guys are doing interesting bottlings when you're doing yours. It's not just, like you said, it's not just, oh, here's Lafroig. Here's the Lafroig we got. It's 10 years old, same like the other one. What do you think the difference is? Yeah. You're going, we got it. We know it's like this. Now we're going to twist it. We're going to twist a little bit more on it and kind of change it and add in some. Sorry.
Well, I mean, it's not exclusive to us at all. I think the job of an independent bottler is to bring people on a bit of a flavor journey, right? I mean, if it's us or Gordon MacPhail or Signatory, and we're all bottling 10-year-old Lafroig, and it all tastes like Lafroig's own 10-year-old Lafroig, then why are we even doing an independent bottler? Like, there's no reason for it. It's if you love Lafroig and that becomes your favorite distillery, like, man, I love their 10-year-old. I wish they still bottled the 18-year-old or whatever. And all of a sudden you find out about independent bottlers. First off, if you know nothing, you're like, who's pretending to bottle Lafroig? Like, who's bottling fake Lafroig? And then you talk to the retailer, and the retailer says, oh, no, actually, there wouldn't be a Scotch whiskey industry without independent bottlers. Let me give you a little history lesson. Right? Then you get the history lesson, and then you get that Lafroig. And the hope is you're getting two things. A, you're getting to experience Lafroig in a way that Lafroig wouldn't show you. Right? Their 10-year-old has to taste like their 10-year-old. Their quarter cask has to taste like their quarter cask, and etc. And just like blends, right? You always want the blend to taste the same. You always want the single malt to taste the same. But an independent bottler says, yeah, that's great, and we love Lefroy too, but try that. Have you ever had a floral Lefroy? Have you ever had one that was more fruity than it was peaty? Right? That's the job of the independent bottler. And I think our aim is to always try to show either a really good example of a distillery just on steroids, or like, here's some, and now for something completely different, right? Those are our jobs. That's what we try to do. And if we're failing on that, then we shouldn't even have a company. And I would say that any independent bottler who doesn't try to do the same should consider not having a company either. Like, you really have to show a difference from the distillery to show that you're independent. Right?
Yeah. I think in addition to that, when you've got Patty talking there about...
That's Patty B, the Rambler.
Patty B, the Rambler. Sorry, I got very familiar very quickly.
That's okay. I've liked the way you've talked. You've kind of sweet-talked to me a couple times tonight.
I'm so known for it. And so when it comes to an independent bottler, you really want to find whose palate do you work with. It's the same as a reviewer, right? Some people swear by Jim Murray and his recommendations. I grew up, I cut my whiskey teeth with Michael Jackson, right? And so Michael Jackson, it was his palate that worked for me. And so when Joshua and I have these blogs where people were reading us, following us, buying based on our recommendations, it was very important to us. And so we, I think, got very lucky. When we made the move into independent bottling, we already had audiences who knew what our palates were like and knew whether or not our palates dovetailed with theirs. And so that really gave us a running start with the nation, and really gave us a running start as an independent bottler, where now we've got, and Ben's a great example of this, he's talking about trading samples, right? And I know many of you and many of us all go around trading samples. And so now people are saying, oh, if you like that, try this from Single Cask Nation. Or you like that Single Cask Nation, try this Single Cask Nation. And now it's snowballing, right? That's how you get to 8,000 nation members, is when people can trust your palates, right? The fact that you add on that we're selling out entire casks in minutes and we're in a lockdown, we're not traveling the country pouring these for people in previews, right? You either trust us and you spend your money, or you don't. Right? It's extremely dichotomous right now, and so that level of trust is everything, which again comes back to how we run the business, right? We, if people email us, well, am I going to like this? Well, we look it up. What have you bought from us before? Where does your palate lean? Yeah. This might not be for you. We don't have to sell somebody a bottle they won't like, because it's going to sell out, right? And so we can say, set this one out. No, you don't have to get that one. And so people, it's trust. It's trust with an independent bottler. And as Joshua always says, it takes a long time to earn and build trust, and it takes a second to lose it. And so we are very aware of that, and we stand by everything we put out.
So you have which I switched to the 10-year blended malt, and I absolutely love this whiskey. Are you going to be doing more? I know there's another blended one coming out, but are you going to do more as a way to have more bottles available? Number one, and number two, how did you discover this one? Because it's so stinking good.
Wait, was it blended before, or did you guys blend it? There's my other question. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I think if you step back and look at what independent bottling has looked like in the past, I would say 4 to 5 years, you're actually seeing more and more single cask blended malts and just blended Scotch whiskey being released, and a lot of it is because a lot of it's coming from Edrington, right? So Edrington owns Macallan and Highland Park and Ventura and a host of other distilleries, and our understanding, and this is very allegorical. I was going to blame Jason for eating a dictionary earlier using the word dichotomous.
Rhymes with hippopotamus. It's easy to remember.
It rhymes with hippopotamus.
That's what you get at university.
Exactly right. But the word around the street is that a lot of this Edrington blend that has been married and then put into casks, so maturing together, married in a single cask, was put down by Edrington to try to. They were going to come out with some special edition, high-end Cutty Sark blends, but Cutty Sark drinkers like to drink Cutty Sark and don't necessarily need the super fancy schmancy stuff, right? And I'm not knocking Cutty Sark.
No, we understand exactly what you're saying. But if someone who goes to spend like $15, $25 goes into like
That's
$75,
right.
you're like,
Yeah.
They like to throw their golf clubs in the back of the old Buick and go down the road.
Exactly. And so there's, some of my favorite bottlers, exclusive malts, Cadenheads. I think Single Malts of Scotland have done it as well. A bunch of others. There's all these really great, older, some younger as well, just like this 10-year-old, sherry cask matured blended malt and blended Scotch whiskey that, when you marry it all together and let it sit in cask for 10, 20, 30, 40 plus years, it becomes some of the best whiskey you've ever had. It's just like gorgeous stuff. And so some of this stuff has been found by independent bottlers like ourselves. We work with brokers who send us their lists. Hey, this is what we have available. Here's the single malts. Here's the single grain. Here's the blended malt. And so, a lot of it is blended malt from the Edrington distilleries. So while we don't know what's in this one or what's in a lot of the other ones, Macallan, Highland Park, those are pretty damn good names, right? Glenturret is a pretty damn good name too. Glenrothes, Tamdhu. So all these fun distilleries in these single malts, or single cask blends, I should say.
And the thing we've been saying in the lead up to selling the blended Isla this Thursday is it's two distilleries from Isla under the same parent owner, right? So it's either Diageo's Kalila and Lagavulin, or it's Beam Suntory's Beaumont and Lafroig. You can't go wrong with either pairing there. And the thought of both of those being in a single cask for 9 years together is kind of exciting. And first fill bourbon at that. So there's, again, right, I think all three of you chaps have hit it out of the park, is we're just looking to do interesting things and show interesting things. Sometimes changing minds, right? The Milk and Honey has a 2-year-old age statement on it. Our Amrut had a 5-year-old age statement. Our Kilchoman had a 4-year-old age statement. We didn't back away from that. We decided to represent that. When it comes to blended malt, we're as pretentious as anybody. Single malt Scotch whiskey all the time. Unless you can find a really nice single cask of blended malt. And it's well worth drinking. So why not? Right? Why not jump into it? Right? And that's what we're doing. That's what we did when we jumped into mezcal. That's what we did in jumping into rum. That's what we're going to do in jumping into cognac. Right? We're just looking for good things that are fun to drink. That's why we're single cask nation. It's not whiskey with an E, without an E, right? It's not rum. It's all the things in cask. So let's have some fun.
Here.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, it's Angostura rum, the Trinidadian rum, 12-year sherry hogshead. That's one of the best rums I've ever sipped so far. This thing is freaking phenomenal.
It's so good.
Yeah.
A bit of a story with that one. So Patty B. the Rambler said that it was finished. Is that your Christian name, Patty B. the Rambler?
It's close. I was Christian. So yeah,
That was pagan.
I was asked
Pagan
that
be the
question one
Rambler.
time, and I remember someone saying, "Joshua Hatton, is that your Christian name?" And being a Jew, So anyway, what were we saying?
I don't know. It's not shite.
something about the
Worry about the
Trinidadian rum.
Yeah, so the Trinidadian rum, right? So you had mentioned before that it was finished in a sherry hogshead, and actually, it's not a finish; it's the full 12 years in a refill sherry hogshead,
Oh,
right?
okay.
Which is
that makes sense
really-
in the flavor. Yeah.
right? But that's really rare in the rum world.
Mhm.
We got, when we bought that cask, at the same time we bought a 16-year, same distillery, Angostura, from a refill sherry hogshead, and that one, like, I still pinch myself. My favorite reviewer, I have two favorite reviewers, Serge Valentin from Whiskey Fun and Ruben from Whiskey Notes. And Serge Valentin said our 16-year-old Trinidadian rum, he was in his top 10 rums of 2019. Like, to make that list with some of the biggest bottlers, with some of the fancier rum names out there, it blew my mind. And so we just, we fell in love with the 12-year-old that you're drinking just as much as we did with the 16-year-old that Serge loved.
Yeah, and the thing that I always say to people, and I said it in the video for the Isla blend as well, we are just, sorry, my SIRI has gone bananas again. Hold on, hopefully she won't hopefully she won't mute my mic again. You can still hear me.
Yeah.
We are just independent bottlers, right? And so when someone loves the Trinidadian rum, the Angostura, they call it what you will, that was put in bottle by us, we love being able to say that was Angostura's hard work, right? They did something wonderful with that, and we were fortunate that the cask sample came across our desk, right? Thank you, Nancy. And so I had this way back in the beginning of the company. I was doing a tasting up in Seattle, and at that point we'd 3 whiskeys to our name in all the world. That was our first 3 whiskeys, an Arran, a Kilchoman, and a Benriach that was peated, and I would pour them next to Distillery Arran, Distillery Kilchoman, and Distillery Benriach. And it was really interesting to me because at the end of the night, somebody had come up to me and said, "I really loved your Arran." I said, "Oh, thank you very much." He said, "But I really didn't like Arran's Arran." And I said, No. These are both Arran's Arran. We bottled this one, they bottled that one. Like, if you didn't like the one they bottled, well, that's a different story. But this is all Arran's Arran. And I'm just here telling you about the Arran distillery. And what I'm hearing is you like the Arran distillery. You should look it up. You should follow it, right? You should buy some more things.
Yep, exactly.
And so for years, we had anecdotal evidence that nation members who discovered a whiskey through us, a distillery through us, and what blew my mind, in those early days, I would do tastings, I would say, how many have heard of the Arran distillery? And no hands would go up. And how many have heard of the Kilchoman distillery? And no hands would go up. And how many of you have heard of the Benriach distillery? And I knew I was fucked on that one, right? How many of you have heard of the Benrich distillery, right? How many of you have heard of the Benriach distillery? And no hands would go up. And so we weren't just starting from a position of what's an independent bottler, or what's a single cask, or what's cask strength, but we were starting from a position that was, what's a Scottish distillery that I've never heard of? Right? And so we started from the very beginning, talking people through all of our tastings and really framing it all for people. And so we went from years of anecdotal evidence to last December, we actually set up a survey for our nation members. And one of the questions we asked was, if you discover a distillery through Single Cask Nation, how likely are you to go to the liquor store and purchase a bottle? And 70%, 2/3 of Nation members will discover a distillery through us and then purchase that distillery at the liquor store. And it was a wonderful moment, because everything we'd seen with our own two eyes, everything we'd heard with our own two ears, everything that we had told distillery partners was true. And it was a really wonderful moment to again know that people are listening, people are following, people are trusting, people are believing. And it was either Mike or Paddy B the Rambler had mentioned this earlier, but I had a chap in LA at the end of a tasting one night who came up to me and he said, I'm joining the Nation. And we've been hearing that a lot, and not everybody does, but I'm joining the Nation. Well, thank you. We'd love to have you. He said, when I left my house tonight, I didn't know there was an Indian single malt. And I didn't know there was a Seattle single malt. And now I've had this Amrut from you that was phenomenal. And I've had this, Westland whiskey from you that's phenomenal. And he said something that I never forgot, and why I'm telling you right now. He said, I never realized it, but the world of whiskey has become so huge that I need somebody to curate it for me. And I am joining the Nation so that you and Josh can curate my private whiskey selection at home. And to his credit, he went home, he joined, he placed an order. And I was really taken by it, because I'd never really thought about the size of the industry or the need for somebody to curate it. And I loved it when he said it, and I've thought about it ever since he said it. So if we can bring milk and honey to somebody, we've done a bit of curation. If we can bring an Irish, pot still, 100% malted barley release to somebody, we've done a job. If we can bring an American craft producer to somebody, we've curated a selection. So, yeah, really, really big stuff.
I'll tell you though, when he called me Josh, he's fucking dead to me after that. Just fucking dead to me. You deal with him now, not me.
And that's where we're going to end the interview. No, I'm just kidding.
No, one thing for people for finding your stuff online, it's going to be a little harder to get the online releases, obviously, because they're a little more exclusive and such. And I don't want you to compete with me with the stuff that I want. So forget everything I said. But in some of the larger cities, there you can find the retails. I know I've seen it in New York, Chicago, and the larger cities in California. What are the standards where people could find the retail releases, which are still fantastic? You're not going to find them anywhere else. So where can people find some of the other stuff?
Well, we have on our website, if you go to singlecasknation.com, we have a distributor list that shows you the states that we're currently distributed in. And actually, I think I need to add 2 states to that now that we're having this conversation. But once you know the state and you know the distributor, even if your local bottle shop doesn't have our whiskeys, if you give them the distributor name, they can order our whiskeys for you. So,
yeah, Ben Holman hitting it out the park.
He knows me well. God damn, does he know me? So I think we're in a bit over 20 states right now.
Yeah.
So obviously, the big states that you would assume, right? California. Yes, Jason.
I just want to add something that you were rightly pointing out to me the other day that you tell people, which is if you go to winesearcher.com, wine-searcher.com, not only can you search for Single Cask Nation, you can also search by retailers who will ship to your state. Mm-hmm. And nice. It's a great way to find, even if you're not in one of the many states that Joshua was about to mention, there should be somebody somewhere who will ship to you as a retailer.
And if not, everyone watching the show and still in the chat right now knows that there are mules out there and they work well.
Mules happen.
Mules happen.
Yeah.
They get stuff
Mules
from place A to place B. So
Yes.
100%. Yeah. There's a way to figure it out.
There's always a way. So if you guys are settling down, let's say it's a nice night now, you've got time to yourself, you've already done your obligation of making sure your wife still loves you. What whiskey do you reach for?
Like a specific bottle or a specific distillery?
Either one.
either one. We're
Your
excited
your
about
your
both.
your special time whiskey.
Yeah. Lechig is my imperial. And so I have a small open collection, or a small Noah's collection of Lechig, which I buy 2 by 2, and so yeah, picking up a favorite Lechig is a good thing. Is a thing that I like to do. In terms of a singular bottle that I reach for, the Whiskey Jubilee first Chicago release, which was an American light whiskey, American grain whiskey, that had first been matured in refill oak, that had then gone into an ex-rye cask that had held an IPA that had been matured with fresh mustard seed and bottled at 64.5% alcohol.
65.8% alcohol.
65.8?
Swinging.
Yeah, near positive. Oh, look at him. There
Oh
it
dear
goes.
God.
Yeah, I'm near positive it's 65.8, and someone told us that it was illegal to sell something at such a high ABV.
Here's the good news.
No.
Here's the good news.
Wow, that's good news.
Neither one of us is correct.
Okay.
And you can split the difference on how wrong each of us was and get the right answer. And so it's 65.1% alcohol, right? And so, yeah, I had a guy in Seattle, the Seattle Jubilee. We had this on the table because Seattle came after Chicago. And he was nosing it, and it's strong. It's a big boy and big girl whiskey. And not that those are the only two options. I don't need to bifurcate. I do apologize. And it's a big whiskey. And he said, "Oh, that's a bit strong." And I said, "Well, tread lightly. It's 65.1." On that occasion, I got the strength correct. And he said, "That's poison, right? That's toxic." And I'm like, "Grow the fuck up. It's 65.1% alcohol. Good crivens.
It's not like it's ever clear or anything.
Right? This is what I drink to relax of an evening. Slow down. So
I love how it wasn't too punchy when he had it at first, but then he found out and he's like, "Oh my god, it's too much now." It's like,
Yeah.
no, you were happy with it up until just 2 seconds
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
people do that with the blended malt that you're drinking. People like it. It holds its alcohol just great.
Yes,
And
it
then you
does.
tell them it's 64.8 and they go, "Oh, I thought it was a bit strong."
Yeah.
It's a bit strong. It's like,
No,
it's not. It's your
no, it's
imagination.
beautiful.
Yeah.
So my answer, I guess I can answer it like this. So, if I'm going to settle in with any distillery, it's going to be Imperial, because I can drink that and turn my brain off, and it's just going to be good, and I love that. Or if I want to turn my brain on, they tend to be really complex and interesting and wonderful flavors and so on. So it's there's certain whiskeys, even though Springbank is my favorite distillery, when I'm stressed, when I want to end my day, that's the last whiskey I want to go for, because it forces me to use my brain. And fuck if I'm not tired of using my brain at the end of the day. There's not much of it there in the first place, right? So I would go for an Imperial. And then if in the bourbon world, I would probably go with a Four Roses store pick or like a Russell store pick or something like that. The Four Roses and Turkey, those are my favorites. Bourbon
Nothing wrong with
distillers.
those. I like those too. Four Roses is what started it for me. So
Yeah. And then-
Debbie Samuels was pointing out that it's Flight 613 that our
yeah.
chap is catching to Chicago.
Smart.
It's an inside baseball reference on that one. So.
It's an inside Jewish baseball. You have to be.
Yeah, right. It's a Carl Yastrzemski inside baseball move.
But if it were to be like a bottling to be like trapped with, it would be this. And actually, I don't have it open yet. I was going to open it for my oldest daughter's bat mitzvah, but Jason got too drunk and threw up in my kitchen sink, and so I couldn't open it.
No word of a lie.
But it would be this. So this is the Lagavulin 21-year-old, bottled in 2007.
Yeah,
I'm not going to lie to you. There has not been a better whiskey bottled ever, in my opinion. Like, this is. Have you ever seen Pineapple Express? Right?
Yeah.
And there's that.
Are you talking about the cross?
Getting there, yes. And so Seth Rogen is with James Franco, and Seth Rogen's like, "Oh, what's this?" You know, with his voice, and he's like, "Oh, that smells great. I want to live there." And James Franco says, "Smell it, smell it. It's like God's vagina." And that, I think of that one line, which is so ridiculous when I think of this. It's just like perfection. And so this is, if Jason's go-to desert dram is that, this is mine.
Except mine's open, and then I'm on to my third bottle of this.
Right.
And there's plenty more where that came from. Here's a little thing for you. We don't say this very often. We stopped selling this bottle when we still had stock left because I wanted to drink it for the rest of my life.
It's true. I think I've got 6 bottles here.
So far, successful. So,
I was going to ask you that. Is there anything that it's like, well, we're gonna hold on to this? Like you had, like normally you'd sell, like, we'll sell out till we have like 10 left, just in case one breaks. Where you're like, let's save 50. Let's save 50 of these.
This is the only one, and that's how many we saved. Yeah, that's how many we did. There were only 225 bottles, and so I really kind of feel a little bad about stopping. But I help people in other ways. So, you can't help all the people all the time.
Sorry. We are getting close to the 2-hour mark, and we usually like to be really respectful of everyone's time. And so we appreciate you coming on. If you want to keep going for a couple more minutes, that's cool. But
if you want to get a 5-minute wrap up, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, that's cool. What are the things you guys have coming out over the next couple weeks or couple months with Single Cask Nation that they could go and get a part of the group, and then they can actually get a chance to get some of it?
I love fuzzy milk. So we've got this coming Thursday, we've got the blended Isla malt and the Stones of Stenness 19 coming. We're also putting the blended malt back on sale. So, for that, you mentioned it earlier, the $10 flat rate shipping fee, you can get a host of bottles in there. So those are coming up on Thursday. We're going to wait until end of July, beginning of August, so that we're at about a year since, I know that's the one. And
finish us all off. I think we're back to that hose.
You be careful, I'll take the hose to you. And so last
lotion
year,
on the skin, or else it gets the hose again.
Exactly. That from you. So, and so last August we released the first in our woodcut series, which was this.
I'm going to beat him to it.
And so our in-house artist, thanks, Joshua. Our in-house artist, Moana McAuliffe, came up with this label. And sharp. So this was a 30-year-old Bowmore with the dragon label on it, and so this was the most expensive bottle we'd ever released in at that point. 8-9 years of releasing bottles. It was $395 a bottle, brand spanking new, and we had 150 bottles for sale. and it sold out in 4 minutes. And so that let us know that this would be the beginning of a really interesting series. And so we've now got the second release in the woodcut series, and it's going to be a 30-year-old Imperial that Joshua mentioned earlier. And even with the tariffs in place, we're going to sell that for $3.95 as well. So this predated tariffs, that's after tariffs, but we wanted the same price point. In no way, shape, or form do we say that's cheap. But for what it is, 30 years old, closed, demolished distillery, it really fits with a 1989 Bowmore. So really special. And then August of next year, assuming there is an August of next year, we'll do the third release in the woodcut series. So, something to look for annually. There'll be 4 total.
Okay.
4 total. So that's the Imperial that's coming up, end of the month, beginning of August. And then we've got a very... we've got the Whistle Pigs that we mentioned earlier, which Ben Holman is peeing his pants about.
And that's what I grabbed here. This is one of our Whistle
Look
Pigs.
how dark it is, Ben Holman. You're gonna love it.
14 years old, and finished in Tokai, Hungarian dessert wine casks.
Crazy shit, yeah.
And then when we were with Whistle Pig, we got to taste all these different finishes. We tasted this Jamaican rum finished and the vermouth finished. And just for shits and giggles, I said, well, let me just marry them. And so I did a 50-50 blend. And it was just so great because you have that like fruity, spicy quality that comes from the vermouth, but it's kind of drying. Mm-hmm. And then from the Jamaican rum cask, you have this more kind of citrusy, slight funk thing going on with that 95.5 rye, which Patty B, the Rambler, I know you love. But yeah, it gave us a chance to do something fun from an independent bottler perspective. Wow, with these 2 ryes. So
that's a pretty neat. Vermouth, just with all the finishing becoming so very popular right now, that's one I haven't really heard too much of. And like you said, the combo of mixing, we had Colin Keegan on. We mixed his 3 single malts all together at the end, at kind of 3/4 of the way through, and he's like, "You know what? We've never done this." I'm like, "Well, what is wrong with you?" I'm like, "This is fantastic. You need to play a little bit more and mix them together." So, yeah, it's what you mentioned. Sounds like that would really work well together with the flavor profile and adding like I said, 4 or 5 extra flavors that you might not have been getting, or a nice layering to it as well too.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
And in talking of flavors, you're not going to get a lot of, or find very often. This will be later this year, and so again, I show Ben Holman the color. This is going to be a 24-year-old bourbon from a Kentucky distillery that experienced a massive fire in 1996, and the label style is again through Moana McAuliffe, our in-house graphic artist, and it's spectacular. And so this will be the color. The label is out of this world. The package will be beautiful, and none of it would mean shit if the juice wasn't formidable, and the juice is formidable. So this is a 24-year-old Kentucky straight bourbon from a distillery that you can maybe imagine who had a terrible fire in 96.
I assume that will be a heavy lottery pick.
So we are trying to respond to the demand that we have. This will be one of our batch releases. So this will be single batch nation offering. And so there'll be, we announced it previously, although we're finalizing the deal on it. I don't want to say a number that we don't come through on, but yeah, we're hoping this will be everybody who wants one gets one. It'll be our little Christmas/Hanukkah gift to everybody. Is you can spend $295 on the bottle you want.
And we're going to have over 1,000 bottles of this for the U.S. and it will also be sold overseas as well. So
this is a global release. This is our first global release
Yep. We were offered a parcel, and we threw our bodies at it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's hard not to when you hear something like that and you get an opportunity. I know we might have gone over this, but they're wondering when the woodcutting trio was being sold again.
You tell Jose Milk. You tell Jose
end of
Milk
July.
we're not going to answer any of his questions.
Jeez, that Josh, what an asshole.
Joshua.
Now,
Go on, Jason.
Josh is an asshole. Joshua is a nice guy. Josh is an asshole. End of July, beginning of August. We don't have a set date for it yet. Yeah, look at this. Woodcut number 3, a Japanese cask. Somebody wants to spend 4 digits on a bottle of whiskey. That's let us not stand in your way, Jose. $1,000 Chichibu in the 3rd woodcut. We're gonna do it. So there you go. So that's it. And then we've still got. Hopefully, we'll have the 7th retail release in the US. We're working on the 2nd UK, Europe, rest of the world retail release. And then, of course, the Penderyn is coming, which we've been talking about on the Facebook group.
Yep.
And
so that will be for retail release UK, Europe, Asia, Aberfeldy 28-year-old, which we're incredibly excited for.
Yeah, you guys seem like you're starting to work your way into a much older profile. Now, was it always that way, or did you guys start around like the 10, 12-year-old and it's kind of seemed to progress that way since you opened the company?
Yeah, the honest answer is when we started the company, we had to be very careful how we spent the money. You could buy 1 cask of the older stuff or 2 or 3 casks of the younger stuff. We also needed to build the nation. We needed to find the audience. You know, the one thing I always say, the only thing you're guaranteed with an older bottle is that you'll spend more money. It's the only thing you're guaranteed. Mm-hmm. And so finding a nation who would be able to move the volume of older stock was a challenge. And so it wasn't until we launched retail that we were able to really start looking at older things. In the grand scheme of things, I'm not really a fan of older whiskeys. Again, because it's an easy cash grab. You can get people to spend a lot of money on something that maybe isn't that great, but it is old, it has a big number on it. And so we're very careful when we get offered older samples. And the thing, and Joshua said this in one of our Zoom tastings for Single Cask Nation, and I thought it was spot on. We always look for the presence of the distillery character, the distillery spirit, even in the older releases. You know, we don't want it to be a big sherry monster where you sit down and you could just be drinking a glass of sherry, right? It needs to be discernible, and so that the Altmore 30-year-old that we just released in our 6th retail release is dark. It's not crazy dark, but it's dark. It looks like it's pretty dark. It's going to be chewy, right? It's going to be heavy. But when you drink it, Altmore is still present in it. That's hugely important. And so we don't just buy older casks because they're older and we can sell them for a big paycheck. They have to still be good. And the bulk of what we bottle is still under 18 years old. Mm-hmm. Yeah, see, it's reasonably dark.
Yeah. Reasonably.
Yeah. Not crazy dark. Crazy.
So oh, go ahead, Pat.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, since you're getting into some of the 30-year-old whiskeys, with a lot of distilleries, when you start getting back 30 years or sometimes 40, like I know earlier this year, Mike sent me a sample of like a 1960s George Dickel. And I had that, and I obviously know everything that happened, you know, from that time to now, but part of me was like, why did you fuck with shit? You know, like I had that and I was like, what happened from back then that this is this, and now when I have it, it's this. Like, why did you screw with it? Have you guys come across something that was so dramatically different when you're starting to taste casks that are like 30 years old? Like, I'm not recognizing all of the distillery that was there, maybe, or something unique like that.
Yeah, I can think of the first instance where that happened, and Jason, I don't know if you remember this, but this was when we were looking to bottle. So, like Jason said, we started off with Iron, Kilholm, and Benria, and then we were looking at our next 3 whiskeys, which ended up being Lefroy, Dalmore, and Glenmurray. But when we were with one of our brokers, we also got shown a 1984 Tamdhu. An 80s Tamdhu has this incredible, like, tropical fruit salad note that I don't find post the 80s for whatever reason. And I remember us nosing it and saying, Jesus Christmas, that smells good. And it was giving off everything that I wanted about the Tamdhu. And Jason, it reminded me of the Whiskey Forum Tamdhu, which was just big and tropical and fruity. And then we tasted it, and it didn't work. Like it wasn't a good whiskey, but it's all distilleries have gone through some sort of a change, whether it's the 70s going into the 80s, where distilleries are slowly switching from brewer's yeast to distiller's yeast. If you take the Ardmore distillery, for instance, like anything that's 19 years and up, that's when it was direct fire still, heating the stills, and that had a different effect. Like those are definitely things that I think about when we're selecting casks, albeit at the end of the day, the best whiskey wins out regardless of history or unusual fact. But I don't know, Jason, can you think of another situation where we've
not necessarily a singular example, but I'm going to get out of here on this because unfortunately I'm up in 7 hours, and I'm normally I'd be up in 10 hours, but I'm up in 7. So
they upset the wife. We're in trouble.
She no longer loves me to let the dog out. So I've recently come to it that instead of us continually pursuing the platonic ideal of a distillery, where there is some defining moment in history, if we could just re-access it, we would be able to say that is the very definition of Dickel or Lefroy or Tamdhu. Instead of pursuing these platonic ideals, we need to, I think, accept the Heraclitean concept of change, that change is the very nature of existence. And so as much as I'm not the same in this moment as I was 1 moment ago, to say that Dickel isn't the same in 2020 as it was in 1968 is almost an unfair statement to make. And instead we should say, this was the Dickel of 68. This was the Benriach of 76. This was the Lefroy of 80, right? And as we're experiencing 2020 into 2021, those continue to be those moments of change that represent the very existence of distilleries. And I'm trying to get my head around that, because I'm same as you, Paddy B. the Rambler, where there are those moments that, oh geez, why isn't this thing that I'm drinking right now like that thing from 5 decades ago? And it's just not fair. It's just not going to work like that. And so I think we should all embrace the Heraclitean concept of change.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, and I'll leave on this as well. I think of Wild Turkey Cheesy Gold Foil.
Yep.
Not only is that, in my opinion, probably one of the best bourbons ever bottled, I would put that up against so many single malts as well, and I am very much more a single malt guy than I am a bourbon guy. Like, I just think that whiskey is absolutely magical. That doesn't mean I don't love modern Wild Turkey. I absolutely love it. It's just different, and that's okay. Would I love all Wild Turkey to taste like Cheesy Gold Foil? Like, at first you would say, oh yeah. But then if it did, then Cheesy Gold Foil wouldn't be special. right? And so I'm kind of okay with that. You know, what's good in modern turkey, right? What's good in modern before I do? What's good in modern alt war or what have you? So.
Yep.
And that's where most of us started. So I mean, is with the current stuff, and you're like, that's what I like. You know, that's what pulled you down the path in the first place. So
exactly, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I almost think we do a disservice to the contemporary means when we only live in the past. And I was reading something from David Jennings, Rarebird 101, the other week, where actually we interviewed him for the podcast, and he was saying one of his regrets is that he held older wild turkeys in too high regard and allowed it to cloud his current conception, you know, and how you value it and how you treat.
Oh, we went silent again, and now he's muted.
Just
Someone shut the Scotsman up.
There we go. I'm back. There we go. Last time I didn't even touch anything that time, and so yeah, he's trying to get his head around that space as well, of saying, here's a time, here's a thing that existed. I experienced it. I enjoyed it, but now there's this other realm, this ongoing realm, and that's where we should be, and that's what we should enjoy, and that's what we are doing as independent bottlers. So thank you for having us.
No.
I apologize to Ben. Ben was complaining we haven't even got to movies yet, so now we got to go into overtime on our favorite Indiana Jones scenes.
Oh, see that's a whole show. That's a whole show of just
we
drinking.
We can come back and just talk Indiana Jones.
That would be perfect.
We can do that. We have a movie stream before where I was like, what are we doing? We're drinking and discussing movies. And what whiskey do you think matches well with this whiskey?
Like that.
Perfect.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
It's
That
tough
works.
though, because I think we went Western, and I think Tombstone came up, and he got like 4 different answers, and you're like, none of them are wrong. You know, none of these are wrong. They're all good answers. Maybe I should have the 4. Do a lineup as we're watching it tonight. But we can't thank you enough for coming on. It was a great having you on. We really appreciate it. Anytime you guys want to come back, let us know. If you're having some release, you just want to tell people about it, we'll be happy to have you on and talk about it.
How about we make a date when we release this? How about we send you samples and we all come back on and we talk about it?
That would be beautiful.
That would be absolutely insane, but I think we could definitely do that.
I would maybe even siphon something for you just for that.
I'll be sure to show up with my plastic hose.
Yeah. Kansas City has now become a stop on the tour.
Wow. This whole 2 hours has just been foreplay for that final.
That's great. I look forward to coming back and drinking some pre-fire Kentucky whiskey with you.
That'd be
awesome.
awesome.
Yeah, we've only found one distiller that still uses fire on. Even with all the craft distilleries we've interviewed, there's only one we found that does it with actual fire still. So it's pretty. Wood Hat in Missouri is the only people that are still doing that we found, and they're still in their kind of heating system, and the floor is all by fire stuff still. So it's pretty interesting, and he does some pretty good stuff on some short time frames. But I'm sorry, don't want to keep on longer. You guys, thank you so much for coming on. Everyone in the chat.
I'm going to say this, and this is why our podcast runs for fucking 2.5, 3 hours, because we never actually.
I thought you were trying to get that extra half hour in here, and we could just.
I know, right?
2.5.
Jeez. Ben Holman raises a good point. What if we send you a bottle of the Kentucky, you divide it up into samples, you send it out to your key watchers, participants, and then we drink it together?
We're actually doing that tomorrow night. With Spirits of French Lick. They sent out some samples, and we just kind of hold a giveaway in 3 or 4 different ways people can win. And we definitely do something like that. And then, like with this right now, how we're on StreamYard, we could actually have up to 10 people in it. So if we wanted to have other people come on, give ideas and stuff. No,
we don't want to hear from Ben. No, Ben in the comments is a good Ben. Ben out in the wild is not a good Ben. He gets into too much trouble that way. But yeah, let's do that. That'd be a blast. I would enjoy it.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
We would be so happy to have you back for that. So, like we said, we appreciate everyone in the chat. You guys stopping in. It was a fantastic stream. Went a little long, but we don't care. So if you're still here, stop over at Whiskey Crusaders. They're probably not done yet. They usually go for a couple hours too.
Go for 5 hours.
Yeah, if you're on that stream, you got to be prepared for like I was there and we were gonna sample 8 whiskeys, and then Matt asked me the day before how many other ones we had that were combinations. So by the end of that, I was on 18 or 19 whiskeys, and I was like ate like a pound of bacon trying to remedy like the drinking too much, and it was just like meat sweats, alcohol sweats. I was like, you're not going to get a good description of the distillery now. I was like, it's just we've gotten to this one, and it's just going to be real short.
I have a feeling that Patty B the Rambler is a good Patty B the Rambler drunk. Like you're
For the most part,
Yeah.
95% of the time. 95% of the time, I'm a happy drunk.
It's all good until he's thrown up in Joshua's sink. That's how all the best nights end.
I'll tell you.
And then I'm just going to be regretful because I'm not going to get a 21-year-old Lefroy.
Right.
It'll be really upsetting as I'm doing it.
You miss out on God's vagina. Yeah.
There you
That's
go.
a perfect way to end this.
That was wonderful. Thank you, chaps, and thanks to everybody.
Thank
who
you very
stuck
much.
You
with
guys
us.
have a good night.
2
Thanks,
hours.
everyone in the chat.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Let's get into it. 1, 2, 3. Have it in. Some more. Just